Welcome back to another episode of Underground Science, which probably should be called Shallogram Science, or maybe another series about shallograms, because this is going to be another episode about shallograms, and Underground Science is really more about the magnetic anomaly maps, a map of the Earth, map of the Earth as a whole, really. And undercurrents that formed it, and shallograms are part of it, but anyway. So, on Etsy, shallograms. When I look for shallograms, I typically look on Etsy like this, or here at rudrocksguru.com. Who has not added any? This one's been up for a while. I bought that one. And I have it. I haven't taken any pictures yet, really. A little bit, but not enough. I noticed this detail is also like inside of these things. The same type of structure forms. So like this point here is essentially a chakra point in other structures around it that are, I don't know if we can see it in the images. Like, for instance, right there, those ribs. Let's see. Pardon me. Got that magnifying glass. Let's take a look here. Where am I? Oh, yeah. Okay. This one here. We can really see it on the bottom side. It's not very visible in this image, but it really looks like this. As well as the other one, both of them. And this one down here. There's another one of these structures down here. Mind you, this one has this structure. This, like, tiered layering. Abrupt shape that, like, is in line with this. Kinda like a lobe of an ammonite structure, but it's clearly some weird structure forming. It's incredible. The features of this stone, like in this hole here, is the tiniest, like maybe a third of the thinness of this one, of a chakra going across. Ask yourself for a second if these stones, according to modern science, it's important to understand. Modern science says this stone right here has the shape that it has because water has eroded its surface. And that reveals these openings as the surface is eroded, leaving these windows into the ammonite structure on shallograms. So according to modern science, this stone has eroded down to become as it is today. However, ask yourself this. If that's the case, as it eroded down and water got into these cavities, why are there chakras? I mean, the thinness of of the chakra in this one is incredible. I don't know if there's an image of it. That's not it. Kind of that nature, I guess. Some chakras there, but I haven't really come up with a good explanation for why this happens here. Some kind of interaction of currents. It's interesting, this boundary and this boundary generally are like in that area, as well as like over here. Almost like a width of, and maybe here too. So maybe there's some kind of current going down this way that then runs into resistance and goes back this way. But some of it goes off this way, interacting with whatever it's running into resistance of, and like spawns vortices along this path as current interacts, generally coming off of this path, going in and into like a underneath this current, but as it goes up, it goes into this current, but then over, and then it has this space to go down. So a general vortex forms, although I really have no idea what to make of these like flower-like structures. They almost make me think that each individual one of these little structures is really almost like an ammonite itself, and like on a larger scale they tend to arrange themselves in different structures, where then like there are different almost like fractal angles of perception of the ammonite, where on one angle it's an ammonite structure, but then within a larger structure, that ammonite exists perhaps somewhere up the like ladder of things. It can occur, at least in a way, where it forms like this, where each specific like portion is actually an ammonite itself, or like a shallogram. But then it happens on a small scale here, where we can see it just like eroded, imprinted into the surface of the stone. Notice the currents around it. I'd mentioned this in the previous one, but I really wanted to talk about, and the reason I decided abruptly to record, I wasn't really thinking about it. I mean, besides just, I haven't really been recording. It's kind of getting a little like, dude, get it together. You were doing stuff. Now I'm just like playing games, smoking weed. I mean, not optimal. Although it's been a nice little hiatus. Terrence Howard was on the Joe Rogan Experience a couple days ago. Highly recommend listening to that episode. Kudos to him and everyone involved in the work. I know there's other people involved. It's really interesting stuff. I don't really like fully agree, of course, because I have my own interpretations. And I mean, but like the mere fact that he mentions the discovery of the speed of light was in 1676. It was really interesting because he was like describing the thing, like the Michelson-Morley experiment, but also like approximating it in a way, like the best understanding he had it was clear he did his own research, which is good, but also comes with it like a limitation of, if you can't like break through to like a full understanding, then there's like this like ceiling that can be reached where it's hard to like regurgitate maybe, because he said Galileo when it's all Romer who made the discovery. And then interestingly, I mean, to me, it said that he listened to Richard Feynman's lectures. That's what it said. Something else told me he listens to Electric Universe. So like I could see certain like seeds of ideas that he agreed with that were like I guess assisting in his search for understanding. And I mean, I said this on Twitter, even though maybe I'm immediately like being critical. I don't want to be overly critical because the internet's like shitting on it and then also defending it. It's been a really interesting reaction as well to see people talk about, because like scientists are like, this is ridiculous. Like Brian Keating said, what did he say? Big if true. I laughed. You gotta laugh. That's hilarious. Big if, like mocking it though. Oh my, hilarious that he said that though. Brian Keating being an astrophysicist. If you don't know who Brian Keating is, he has a podcast called Into the Impossible and has been on the Joe Rogan Experience, and I think like Lex Friedman and probably several other very popular podcasts. And who knows? I don't know. But he's being an astrophysicist, he's more like a mainstream. He also was like shitting on what's his name? I forget his name. Sorry, fellow. Bert. The guy recently who came on and talked about the moon landing being staged. And I mean, his reasoning is sound. The evidence he presents is indeed highly suspect and questionable in terms of like what in the fuck is going on with this moon landing. It seems kind of bullshit. I see some bullshit. I know bullshit when I see it. And I've seen the U.S. government. You know, maybe it probably was going on back that far too. They were just bullshit in there. At some point, they were like, "We should make this legal. We're just doing it. We might as well." It's all in the like. It's hard to do it when it's not illegal. It's so much easier if we legalize propaganda and lies. Then we like. But like defending the moon landing, I'm like, you know, like the fact of the matter is like, dude's got points. You can't just like call him a lunatic and like stand on credentials and position alone. Like we need some like evidence, some like details, something more of substance than just like name calling. Okay, before I go talking about that too much, I really want to talk about this shallogram. Dudes, this might be, it's hard to say because I've seen a lot of incredible shallograms. This might be the most profound shallogram I've ever seen. And I don't know how much it was sold for, but I had an opportunity. It's I got that, so I got sent these pictures. Hopefully, I haven't explicitly received permission I asked for permission. He gave me permission to put them in the book. I assume he's cool with this part of me. I'm just like abruptly recording this, and I was like, he never really like responded to that. But he sent me these personally, so they weren't on Etsy. But this is from the shop on Etsy. But then apparently it sold, so it's no longer available. I really doubt it was in my price range. I mean, this thing is like 16 inches in diameter, or in its largest width. I don't know why here we go. So, Mangulum jewelry. This one, I forgot about this one. I saw this the other day. I was like, whoa. It's just like it. In some ways, it's just a rock. Just looking at it here, it's just a rock. But then, like this angle, it's like, wait a minute. I see ammonite features. I know there's the Mangulum jewelry. We'll watch the video in a second. I see ammonite features right here. Right this way, over this way, around, 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 around. And then here, and then like this generally, it almost looks kind of like a boundary. Either a chamber or the end of like the ammonite spiral over here as well, having similar type of thing. So there's some kind of something going on. You can see it kind of here in this image. Something's more going on than just a rock. And then let's play this though. So then we see this circle, like an ammonite will have, like around the chakra center point, and then this line going this way, this line going this way, this line this way, this line this way, like the chambers. It's segmenting the rock. Possibly a cross current here, because essentially what's happening is two currents are meeting, and the tangential interaction is inducing an eddy. So and generally in these structures, a lot of the time there will be an actual erosion like this across the surface. I'm trying to think, like, I bet if we just look at like we're looking for like a crack of like a white quartz like material. That I believe he has a posting of in here. Or like that it does this, like it's not arbitrarily dividing, it's an actual point of the cross current that's creating a divide and inducing this type of outcome. Is what I'm here. This is the one I was thinking of. I don't know if it's gonna have quite what I was hoping for. For sure, they exist, especially on here, but I don't want to go too deep down that pursuit. Although maybe for a second, let's check it out. I don't know why was that so large. Whoa. I haven't really looked at shallograms that much recently, except for a few. I bet if like that right there, the way it has like an abruptness to it, is an example. Not the best example, but I don't know why this is not doing anything. I guess so. Well, we'll just move back onto this one. Okay. So just, I believe I posted, I guess I didn't post the image. One of the images had a measuring tape across it, across just a line across its top, like across here. That was like 16 inches, you could see here, and going down to one over there. So it's about 16 inches. This thing's huge. Okay, no, before we look at that side. This side, there's definitely some features about it that are of interest. Like, first of all, something about large shallograms is they are able to capture the details of the process in ways that smaller shallograms just simply do not. It's just not there because they're smaller, and not able to because of like the essentially being composed of the same building material of like shale particles that are the same grain size. So it's basically the same material, just in a smaller system that is, mind you, operating in a more cosmic way, not a fossil, but current flows are flowing within these stones of water during the global flood that was flowing through this region of the Himalayas specifically and creating, well, not the Himalayas yet, but through this region, which I don't know if it wasn't the Himalayas yet or if something like it seems like because they're only found in this pathway, like that resistance had to be there when that pathway was being etched of the Kaligandaki Valley. But the fossils predate the mountains according to interpretation and so on, and I mean it's probably so in some way, but like the mountains probably played a role in forming them. So it's kind of an interesting thing in that manner. It may be that some other resistance played a role, but it seems like it would be the mountains of the Himalayas that were the most like at play in creating resistance, so that when water was flowing from the north into the resistance, it ran into what then arced as the Himalayas, but at the center a jet stream went through what then became the Kaligandaki Valley, and that jet stream etched through, and while doing that, it created many eddies in the location that formed shallograms. These are not fossils as they themselves demonstrate, and that this one has many really like incredible proofs that are just so profound that it's hard to fathom how people could see it any other way once like actually considering the possibility. Regardless of how deep down the rabbit hole of fossil interpretation they are. Okay, for instance, right here, we've got this boundary that goes across this way and down and around, and kind of like the lobes do, like they do in the ammonite structures at different points. But notice it's like in line, so we go across here, across, do. There's that boundary, and then it goes abruptly up and over here, almost like it's spiraling like this way, like an ammonite in this direction, spiraling in, maybe like an eddy that then has a spiral to it that has some like actual tail to the spiral forming that then generally led to a shape like this, which then can like lead to different layers of the lobes. Because that's the impression, like looking at it, like I know it's in this plane, but if you think of it almost down this way, like the structure, it's kind of spirally, like across this way, down, maybe across here to here, something of this nature. But also having like another spiral there. It's almost like a ring spiral there. Where some of it was spiraling in, creating like certain boundaries, while other portions were more at like an equilibrium distance. All while a flow is swirling in an eddy, but then that flow itself, as it propagates, is swirling in an eddy. So there's all sorts of eddies going on. Leading to all sorts of eddy features. So I guess my palm really wanted me to look, or us to look, me to bring us to look at this top of the shallogram. So when we're looking here, this opening, this big ol' opening, is over here, like right in this region here. And so that opening has like a spiral of an ammonite that goes back this way and around. And then it has a shale like top. So like if I go here, tops, so like this, like the way this is. So mind you, this is maybe worth noting. There's a flow. Like this happens because what's happening is these this this water flow through the Himalayan region. However, exactly whether the Himalayas were there at the time exactly or what have you, maybe the energetic pressures were there, but the mountains themselves were not yet manifest without enough like oomph at the end that really brought them up, and that the pressures were there was enough to form the shallograms, and then they came up, the Himalayas came up or something, and maybe even the formation of the shallograms, the eddies that were there were part and parcel of the uplift of the Himalayas in some way. I don't know. Haven't really thought about that, like the actual. Anyway, but notice like there's a path here, so like a current flow went this way, specifically across there, down through there. But so in essence, the water flows into this region. It takes the grains, the material that is in it. The water is not just flowing like casually, it is highly pressurized. It is deep enough and with enough like energetic oomph behind it, kind of like boiling water, where there's pressure causing the water to move, which then it goes up, but then sideways, and it starts to move and like cycle, and it then has a actual circulation, but it wasn't like a peaceful circulation that when the flood was happening, where it just kind of like layered the earth in a sheet of water. Mind you, the earth was, all the continents were conjoined as a single landmass, and then the earth expanded. That's how much water pressure, though, was occurring is the water that got to the surface became so deep that it literally eroded its flows, collided and eroded down between the actual paths of what then would form the shapes of the continents. And that is why they have their shapes, is because of the way that the current flowed, which is imprinted in the earth. So we can see how the current flowed in all of its detail, and it's in the magnetic anomaly map as well as in the earth itself. Seemingly in the gravity anomaly map, I haven't really looked into that thoroughly. I have seen some things around Chicxulub that would suggest that there's also some current flow aspect to how it came to be as it is, in terms of like how the masses laid themselves out and distributed themselves so that the gravity anomalies would be as they are, being a result of these current flows. But these current flows, sorry, I really want to talk about shallograms, but this is the context we're in, and mind you, a part of me, I know this probably sounds crazy if you haven't looked at the evidence that I have presented and presented and presented. Like, I don't just suppose things, I come to conclusions based on, like, this is a thought. What does this place have evidence? Like, what is there? And like, use the information to guide me. Not the conclusions. I don't really care what people's interpretations are unless they're valid. Then I'm like, wow, what else do you have to say about this interpretation? But generally, they're in the modern paradigms of science, which are not really like the substance of what I'm looking for, because the substance is the data, which is there regardless of the interpretation thereof. Like, for instance, I didn't even notice, but if we look again, though, this path here goes this way, and then notice down here over this way around, and then it seems to kind of maybe fade off here, but then over here there's like almost like a branching thing going on where it goes over here, over this way, and then maybe joins back together over that way. Like, weird, also in like a spiral type of structure, but like, notice how it starts below and comes to the top and goes over, kind of like the shallogram I talked about in my last video, the broken one, I believe, or 2 videos ago. I don't know when sometime, maybe that was the last one. Yeah, that was the last one. But yeah, so the current flows into this region, takes the physical particles, brings them together under high pressure where currents are colliding and kind of creating a container where there's exterior pressure, and then there's an interior region that is compressed into basically a stone. But it's not hard and it's not impermeable. The water flows through it like a living organism, like a star, like an atom, like a planet. It literally behaves like a fractal iterative elementary particle for the time that this process is occurring, where its particles are in motion, and the water, the current, the flow of this surrounding pressure of current that then flows into the space moves the particles, shapes the particles and the structure of the overall stone, arranges where certain materials are found in the stone, and basically shapes it to have through eddies forming in the water that are then forming within the stone. Eddies in the stone in the eddies of water in the stone that are moving and transporting these materials then shape it. But then sometimes those eddies aren't just like a single basic eddy where there's just like a single vortex. Dude, and then like a surrounding pressure that's holding this vortex and this stone to then create like a standard shallogram like this one where there's like a single ammonite in the stone, and that's really single ammonite in the stone, single ammonite, single ammonite stone, single ammonite stone. This one is not quite like that. Like it is from this angle. But then we notice there's one here, of course. There's also one in here. But the details I haven't really gotten into. Notice this like bulge here, like this shape. It's kind of like rounded. It's got like a divide here that kind of goes that way, kind of goes that way, where there's almost like a division between this bulge and this, and where they're splitting is this third one. So basically what I'm getting at is this bulge. So if we go back to before we talk about that, the basic process is that as this eddy flows inside of the stone, particles in the bulge at the top flow down through the chakras into the bottom chakra and into the base, where they then run into under pressures where the rock is then like no longer able to flow out of that region, so it's got like an actual boundary, so it runs into it and flows outward and fills a base like a bowl, and then that bowl overflows to the top to then flow through the top, and in so doing fuels the process. So like a good example is the snake one of the most incredible for sure, if I can find it. If I just go here, Disprove Science, there it is, 63. This one, where the flow of the particles went down through the chakra into this base, but then it flowed out of the base around the top and up and over and into the top region, creating an actual conduit path, because it's not as if you have like a bowl under pressure from in its surroundings, so it can't overflow sideways and over the side. So if it starts to overflow, like what it's gonna do is not slowly build up. It's not gonna just like, I mean, it can to a degree, but at some point, what it's gonna do is essentially form a single conduit path to get over top the resistance, because essentially there's a pressure down, and as this bottom segment fills with material that then is flowing sideways and then running into resistance, so it starts to flow upward, but then it's running into resistance because there's a pressure downward, because there's these highly pressurized currents pushing into it from all directions. So when it goes up, it basically wants to get over top something so it can flow some other way other than into that resistance. So once it gets over the top, it then flows atop the ammonite structure, over top the rock, and the flow then like reaches almost like a activation energy, like enough energy for the reaction to occur where like this base material is able to recycle back into the top and flow back through and influence the ammonite structure internally and reshape it perhaps in some fundamental way that but the point is there's a flow that goes over the top from the base. So in this case, this here is the top that was like being fueled from the bottom side. So if we go through here, I only posted certain. I didn't really start talking about the things that I'm talking about in the images yet. I don't know if I have the bottom. Let's try to find the bottom real quick. I don't know if I have an image of it. Here we go. So this is the other side, which has these things going on here in the pyrite. So I'm trying to find if we can find a path to connect the sides. This top, like an actual shale pathway around the ammonite that's still like physically there. So this is the top side now. Okay, before we watch this, so what I'm getting at is we've got one ammonite system here that then, as this flow was coming over the top to the top to feel in to and like a faucet, some of the current that was going down to like down the layers of the tiers of the ammonite pretty much. So like there's a space here that is conducive of holding material by the shape of the underlying structure that's forming of the ammonite, because the currents are forming this ammonite structure, which is then allowing for this space above the ammonite structure where material physically amasses, which is then this. But really, like, all of this was flowing from the other side. But the thing is some of it, like, divided. So current flowing from the other side seemingly fueled into this and this. So at first glance, there's an ammonite, like it's just a negative imprint of an ammonite. So if we go over to this image, all right, this here, it's just an ammonite. Like if you could put an ammonite in right here, in this space exactly, to here. Like that was generally what was happening, is an imprint of an ammonite happened. But then we notice like the structure continues a little bit, like especially over here. And notice around here, like there's this little speck thing, that, some regularity to structure around it. And then if we go back to this, So here, I just kind of drew it. If we go back to this first image, this boundary out here that then goes this way, over here, around here, over to here, and across that way. And then has these, like, this is a mass of an ammonite if I've ever seen one. Let me see if I can find an example. Kind of reminiscent, really, of what we just saw here that I don't know where it was. Can also go here. Pieces of ammonites. Let's see. Let's just flip through these, see if anything's like the way this one. This is a good example, really, because we have the outer segment is pretty shale-like, this could be the surface of it, just like here. But it's really begun to be shaped, is what's actually happened, is the process has eroded into its surface enough to create these paths here, 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 and it's starting to create division in the structure and eroding suture patterns over here at this segment especially. And then the inner portion though has like more structure here, and then further inside looks kind of like this segment here, even though it's not a negative, is kind of like this segment over here. Okay, so let's move past that one, because that's really not the... This is kind of like an opposite, where there's actually a mass and then a negative. Where in this case, there's a negative and then a mass. This might be kind of like a negative down here. I don't know. Doing it again here, where it actually breaks there, like the current etches. So like I would suggest maybe there was a primary current that was kind of like in this general path across here, like across here, across here, across here, across here, that then generally went across. So it can create that like positional flow, like that one. Did we even finish looking at it? This thing. Like this right here. This path. Like it's got a top, it's got a bottom, and then it's got a space that it like expands out in over here. So it's almost like a flow, and then it expands out in this space, or runs into resistance and narrows across a path and is the opposite. If it were to, oh my god, like this is incredible. It's got so many shallogram features or ammonite features. All these lines, the way they are, this even has like little surface roughness to it, looking little like segments. Wow. And just this structure. This is very reminiscent of Pakistan, honestly. Is this found in Pakistan? Where was this from? It's probably not from Pakistan, but if it's from India, not from Nepal, I don't know if they say. Maybe I can ask. This thing is incredible. $57 for a rock that has an ammonite subtly imprinted in it. Whoa. It's so subtle. But I was gonna look at Pakistan. Layers. I'm like, how do I do this again? How do I do this again? Right here. Let me just pull this over here. Click that. It's so similar. I gotta kinda do it like that, I guess. What? Oh my god. Like a nucleus type region here, a chakra type region with chamber, outer edge that goes around here generally. And then the mantle puncture hole being in this chamber. This is a very important ammonite on the surface of the earth. There's not just like some ammonite. This one is where it's the epicenter, really. Is basically the epicenter of the Earth expansion in terms of where currents were flowing from. Is this ammonite's final chamber, which is then in a larger ammonite that reaches to the final chamber is here. See my recent videos. This is literally where that final chamber is. Right here, from this corner up to here, down to here, and across, including this thing. Like this space is this space, which then has this shape of a spiral. And if you look over here, is within a larger spiral that goes out and around this way and spans across the Himalayas. Can't see it, but it goes out this way, across the Himalayas through here, like in this general region. So there's a huge ammonite in the magnetic anomaly map visible, more so than in the terrain here, that then has this other ammonite here, which is itself within a larger, like, intermediary ammonite structure here. And this thing looks a lot like this thing. Okay. So I barely talked about the first shallogram though. Some details. Let's just kind of get to it some more. So again, this is, so if we say, let's say this negative extends further into like a larger ammonite structure over here, this thing abruptly ends, and then underneath it is a chakra. So it's almost like energetically this system is connecting to this system through a energetic coupling point with such veracity, with such intensity of the process, something about the exchange leading to an actual eddy, like Terrence Howard was talking about with I don't want to say like his idea, because I really, whoever made that needs some more like recognition, but the vortex things, for vortex like how gravity is caused by, how gravity can be basically manifest by just putting vortexes into each other and like letting the maths play out kind of thing to then create Saturn and so on. Like, that's really interesting and certainly is an aspect of what's going on. And these pressure points or vortexes that can happen between energetic systems where there's like a coupling, kind of like a bond. That's probably pretty much what a bond is. It's like a big thread of energy that physically is like a rope. Like a rope is strong enough rope, a chain, or depends on how strong the rope is, can really bond. And then there we have it, our bonding mechanisms of like chemistry and things. But in this case, some kind of division of this flow over the top that then leads into an eddy over here off the side. But like, so it's kind of like it flows up there, it flows down here and fills it in a way where then flow starts to like fill in over to the side as well, because this ammonite is large enough so it has space to the side and starts to fill in, but it's like swirling apparently in a way where then this ammonite structure takes shape out of the material as well. So it's got all these nuances happening. Mind you, this over here we're going to look at some more. This right here. So notice where we first started talking about this stone, right? This corner here that goes across this way and down, that then is in line over here. As well as maybe more like flatly in line across this way, possibly almost like this. Top maybe points at the same location over here, generally. I don't know. But this here, where this is where this is, right? This point right here. So going back this way is this like path. And then notice there's like a second path over here, possibly related to over there. So this path, look at the shape of it. It looks kind of like saw blades or like arms of a galaxy. You know, like something that a spiral vortex energy could account for. But fossilization processes kind of just waves their hands and says, yeah, yeah, shit happens, man. Shit happens. That's fossils for you. Time, erosion, coincidence. Any questions? Wake up. What do you mean you're bored? What do you mean we said time, erosion, coincidence to explain everything? Well, that's how it is. What do you want? What you want? Vortex energy? Like galactic arms and ammonites? That would be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. Sit down. Let's see what I said. Like the arms of a galaxy. This shallogram is out of this world. Going to have to do a video about it. 3 ammonites with so many nuances, and there are clear spiral marks in the ammonites that are incredible, which is these things that we're just talking about. Many elements of this shallogram have the capacity to rewrite all of modern science. I mean, it's just so. When they're not fossils, but caused by current flows of the flood that can be traced, that demonstrate geology is not accounting for details. Physics, chemistry, I mean, really history, philosophy, psychology. I mean, how far down the road of sciences do we have to go to find one that is not impacted by actually knowing what the hell a shallogram is? Because it ain't a fossil. This one is so... I mean, and then down here, right there, kind of like that. Like a relationship probably was there. This here even. Hard to say what's going on with that. Unfortunately, this is the best quality I got. Most of these images are from the video. So again, there's that negative. Another example of such proof is the additional detail that the largest ammonite, so remember I was talking about with that snake one, 63 it was, I believe. This one, it's probably a good angle. How it flows from the bottom to the top. So it overflows to the top and fuels. Mind you, this is the bottom. So perhaps the flow was going in the path of these paths that we'll see a bit better in the video. Like the ammonite, if you can see here, is kind of going this way. Like here are the ribs around here going, but the ribs are going like this, and then this is the base, but then around here is like a segment of like somewhat eroded, like it's eroded but it's not eroded as much as up here where there's still like a dark layer here, but it's not here, but it's much more here where like the mass is. So at this boundary there's like signs of erosion along this way that then become much more clear over here, and up here looks like erosion generally in this region happened, like, but in a specific like current path. So if we just follow that current path, what do we find but Mr. Ammonite on the top? This guy. So that current path leads straight here, where this Ammonite is. So it's almost like the flow was going like. It makes me think of almost like a ice cream. Like you pull the thing and the ice cream starts coming out and it starts building a mound, and it keeps coming out, but then it like bends to the side and starts building another mound because the first mound's too big, even though it's coming from the same like angle of approach. Similar thing here where like it's flowing, it builds a mound in front of it that then like holds the space so that it builds a mound in front of it but behind the first mound, where this is the behind the first mound being on top of the large ammonite, the top of the ammonite thing that I was talking about earlier. The actual top segment over there. Over here, this segment. Top. So like flow coming across builds a mound, but it keeps coming, but it can't get in here, but it has space over here to build another mound, but over here it does so in a way where like it drains within the confines of itself and builds an ammonite in essence. Where this one actually, this like material doesn't just drain down here and go back like in within this space. It actually goes to the bottom of the stone through the chakras, like down the whirlpool, through the chakras out into the base, where then it comes back up around the whole of the stone. So this only happens in this segment of the stone. Can't remember. I think I was just trying to capture the surrounding details of this. It's hard to capture. Like here. To show that this structure continues in a way where there's more out here. As well as just general structure. That's the opening into the other one. Opening into the other one, which has these like jet stream looking things. If we look at it like here, like these etchings, which happen in shallograms a lot. Let's see if I can find one like down here somewhere. It's probably actually groups. I don't know. Drilled through? Probably drilled through. Doesn't quite have the same nature as these. This is crazy how this is. I don't know if I ever even noticed that on that one. Whoa, because there's the chakras, like this way. What in the... Some other, you can even see the little indentations going along this. Up, down, where it like eroded in like pixelated manner, where it kind of like erodes, moves, erodes, moves, erodes. eroded through there, but not before creating like an ammonite structure that is still imprinted there. But this can happen like off the side of the ammonite, like off this way a lot. Um, like off this way. This might be even a good example relating to it. The way like current basically from inside the eddy here will flow along the boundary of the structure that it's forming in the stone, and will flow along the actual surface of this structure to then go to like the far point here as well as down here and then collide with one another. In this instance, it looks like they collided in a way where they like stretched out and just sprayed and created an actual spray path this way, where the currents ended up actually creating like this eyeball block looking thing, or I don't know what to, thinking of an eyeball looking this way, like here. I swear it looks like an eyeball. What do you mean it doesn't? I can't be wrong. I can't be wrong. But this spray thing is possibly related to what's going on here. Or I'd have to think about it more in essence. I'd have to think about it more and whether or not it's an inflow or outflow. My first guess would be an outflow, but like especially inducing it, but maybe not. Maybe an inflow interacting with this top material is why the second ammonite ultimately formed. So we got this flow coming off from the bottom around the side to the top to where the ammonites are at, which are then connected to one another. We can kind of see the ribs here, like just the way it kind of ripply looking going across this way. And then underneath it, the chakra. Then there's the chakras. There's the larger one. There's the top. So this one is kind of off the side of the top. Chakras really almost like where the top would have kind of continued to. Almost like it formed at the boundary of the top. And then the eddy extended into the top. But it ultimately had like a boundary chakras position. Not the best image, a little blurry, but we can see those kind of like triangular shapes too, almost like triangle here, triangle here. I know it's not quite, I don't know what to make of it exactly. I guess it's kind of reminiscent of the more standard where it's shale, but in this case it's pyrite. Like, let me see if I can find one. This one's really eroded. But sometimes there will be like shale, like this material will have basically a current as the flow goes down through these chakras. Some of it then goes out sideways before reaching the bottom. Like the pressure at the bottom, like it runs into, there's ultimate pressure at the base, but as it approaches it, it runs into resistance, and some of it just goes to the side earlier And that's where the vortex is happening, is from this sideways motion that is then flowing outward to the side internally within the stone, which then is flowing in an eddy by this flow going down into resistance, and then surrounding pressures leading to basically an eddy in that position, which then has like fills a shape like a vortex, a toroidal shape. And then this other flow drain of this top cap flows down through the top, through the chakras, and into this ammonite structure. But between the two, the top and the ammonite, is an actual space that forms where current flow goes around this ammonite structure and goes essentially eddies inward, reaches a point where it sprays from under all this pressure. All these pressures pushing in, pushing in, pushing in, eddy forming, and as the water swirls in to a point at the center, it then sprays from there, not in the eddy, but it basically around the eddy in all directions, colliding like over here, but then etches these ribs into the ammonite structure, these pathways. And sometimes it takes the shale and leaves behind segments of shale. So this one has been really eroded. So we're not really seeing it in this one. I can think of some, but whether or not I'll find them easily. And maybe this one might have some such details, or like here. I know like I have some shallograms that have the things I'm thinking about, but I don't know if I can. Kind of like this, I guess. The way the shale extends outward as this like tab. It's been so long that it's like, why are we talking about this? The pyrite seems to be doing a similar thing here, but I've never seen it do it where it wasn't the shale. That's like this, like I was saying earlier, these larger shallograms really have features that only large shallograms have. Kind of like this tiny shallogram has this like starfish shape that only tiny shallograms have. I've never seen that in a large one. I've never seen the little pillar chakras that are really just like little pillars like this one. Never seen any of that. Let's see. So there's another angle of this one. So there's again. So we're at whatever's going on here. This portion where that it relates to the actual like different layers of the ammonite structure, where this is like the very top up here, and this is like a secondary top layer. And whatever's going on, that relates to over there and over here. This alone is incredible. Like that we can see an ammonite shape over here, but like, what explanation is there? What are these shells doing? They're just breaking into smaller fractal shells arbitrarily. Like, how does it do this? How does a fossilization process do this? It cannot. It did not. Like, oh my god. Okay, let's finally watch the video. perhaps just start at the beginning. Okay, actually, I will play this relatively slow. 50% speed. Okay, guys. Whoa. Just want to enter into it. Be standing like over here. Hello. Do the see what kind of echo it produces. Whole thing vibrates. Some moments, the angles are really interesting. It looks like it has some kind of nucleus thing. It's hard to say from the images. I don't recall it, like some blob. It looks like that's actually between the chakras. Let me look at this image again. Sorry, guys. Let's look at this here. Possibly that's between the chakras, whatever that is. It doesn't look like it in this image, but it does in the video. Okay. They're angled like. Looking in on that second one, we can see those lines over there. Notice it's like right in line with the top. The angle kind of changed, but let's go back. There's probably another better shot, but Look how far it's eroding. Like we see the structure all the way out here of this chakra going up in the tiers. And then here is the ammonite on the top, the secondary ammonite. The portion that looks like, if modern science wants to deny what I'm saying about this specific shallogram, they would say that's not an ammonite portion, and therefore none of that applies because it's not so defined that they can see it. But that's right there. And it's clearly a portion of an ammonite. So, like, there's another ammonite cleanly contained within this first one and across its boundary, which only happens if current flows are inducing these shapes. Because eddies can cross each other's boundaries. Fossil shells cannot. It's like if I take these two stems and I try to pass them through one another, like they resist. They hit each other and they don't go through one another. You know, because that's what physical things do when they're solid. But if they're liquid or fluid and flowing in shapes of eddies, then they can cross each other's boundaries and like reach into the space. Then it makes sense. It's perfectly valid within the confines of that paradigm where, or lens, or whatever word, of that word, perfectly within the confines of that word. Word. Very cool. Very cool. It's hard to tell what's going on in there. Definitely some interesting detail. This is one hell of a shallogram. Oh my god. You can kind of see right there, like, the definition. It's almost like something's in there. Ladies. You know, it's just sitting in there when you see something like that. Like, something's in there. Oh, God. I don't want to leave fellas out. Fellas know what I'm talking about, too. It definitely has a nucleus. Wow. It looks kind of like it might even have connected to the back. Hard to say. If it does, that would be insane. That would mean the erosion is like getting in and creating an eddy, but like the back portion, it kind of like doesn't quite get around as much, and like doesn't quite as erode the structure as much, so that perhaps in this instance, if it were to be connected from the nucleus to the back like that, would like demonstrate some aspect like that. Some interesting stuff over here too. Well, hard to say what's going on there, but interesting. And we're back at the opening. There's those pyrite. Like, it's almost like it's oozing out. Like, if you put down something on a liquid and then it flows out. So if this top is like pushing down on the ammonite, and there's like a fluid underneath the top and above the ammonite that generally is like contained but able to flow just like everything else in the stone, but where there's pressure flows it out through certain pathways, like this way, this way, this way, wherever. But like where this protruding portion is related to an outflow from underneath this that went out there and out there, possibly out there, kind of thing. Looks like. Look at that spiral, and when he spins it, it just flows around with it. Like, oh my god. Oh my. That's insane. Dudes, think about that though. The way it flows when he spins it is actually really revealing. Oh my god. It's like you're turning down a road. Like there's a channel, a path, flow path that just like bends in a way where it just like does so, like turning the hologram. I must have went too far back. Okay. Pardon me, pardon me. I feel a little bad showing this. If it's more, it's not quite like the Etsy videos he posts. So it's kind of got some panning around. Again, we can see abruptly in all of this just like region of the stone. It's like eroded looking. And then really has like maybe a crack in this area. Maybe there's a flow generally this way, one way or the other, and another flow this way. You can see the smoothness, like there's like a pocket where current flowed around that, around here. And then one over there, right there, around here, this way, right over across this way. Ammonite. Cross this way, Ammonite. Now I'm on top of it. Sometimes I don't. Just like, look at this. Do you see this thing in the corner underneath me? It's so amazing. Let me talk about it for 10 minutes before I notice. I thought about replaying my music I made for the last video, but that felt lazy. And too soon. Gotta make some more. Gotta make some more. I've just been doing other stuff completely. I'm playing games that are irrelevant. Although, honestly, it helps me think sometimes. To just kind of enter into this other world. Oh, all these, like, right around there. Sorry, I kind of spaced out with the shalogram. This is the portion of the video I should maybe pay more attention to. This maybe not, but like what he's about to do, or what we're about to see. It looks like there's some possible like tooth-like etchings in the side over there also. Just like pay attention to like the way it looks almost like draping in. Like erosion happened in this space here, and this is like a portion of this energetically. Like there's some kind of dividing. Not so visible anymore, and there it's kind of visible right there. Whoa. It almost... Holy shit. It almost looks like dendrites. Holy shit. Pardon my French. I know I keep cursing. Doesn't the word curse mean like to curse? Like, I curse you. Not like fuck. Seems like people just trying to control one another. Makes me think of soccer moms, like Karens. Perhaps they're the bane of the world. Like the driving force of it all is lawlessness. All is lawlessness. HOAs. Who came up with that first? Was that a anarchist? Or was that a Karen? I rest my case. But these dendrite type things, like this. But like especially here, it looks kind of like it's going off this way. Whoa, that's oh shit. I guess it is. Oh, I guess it is. Okay, guys. I'm tired. I'm out of here. I appreciate everyone's time, energy, effort, attention, etc. Till next time, peace out. Thanks for hanging out. Hope this was interesting and not too me just highly meandering in my speech.